Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Yes, that's right. Okay, I always tell everybody I have to set my timer because I grew up Baptist. And I might not leave. Okay, and I promise we won't use all these notes. These are just references I make. But I love when Reverend Jean Marie called me. I was so honored. As some of you who may have been here Sunday, I mentioned that I did my first ministerial internship here. So it is just an honor to stand on this stage and to be asked by Reverend Jean Marie. And thank you, Ollie, for the bowls. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Keith and Bruce for the beautiful music. Thank you. So it's just a wonderful evening, and I'm so glad you all chose to be here today. So this is our Thanks for Living service. And so we're going to start off talking about thankfulness and gratitude and all that those things mean. And you know, it takes courage to be thankful. I'm going to start with Apostle Paul this evening out of Philippians 4, when he says, I've learned to be content whether I'm abound or abase. And so that means that no matter what my situation is, I can see the beauty. I can see the lessons. I can see where I'm going with this. And when you live in a world where people tell you if things don't look a certain way, that you're not doing it right. And to have the courage to say that these are all my experiences, and I'm embodying all of them, and I'm learning from all of them, and I'm growing from all of them. And that's the fullness of it. That's the fullness of it. And so I'm thinking about also, I love studying the pre-Socratic Greek philosophers. And the one I'm thinking about in particular is Heraclitus. And the reason I really love Heraclitus is because he wrote in Ephesus in 5 BC. And you know who else wrote in Ephesus? Paul. Paul wrote a lot in Ephesus, and especially in the book of Corinthians, which was written around the year 53, 54, you can see a lot of Heraclitus's influence on Paul. Now, Heraclitus, those of you who may not be aware, he was the one that came up with the fragments such as the only change is constant, and you can't step in the same river twice, and the ladder you go up is the ladder you come down. So you thought your grandmother wrote all those. No, Heraclitus did that. But when we're talking about being grateful and the idea of not letting the world dictate to you how you should do it and how it should look, there's something in us that has to be different. Something in us that's willing to say, I don't care what they say or what they said, I'm willing to accept my situation and be in it. And so Heraclitus said something I thought was very interesting, and we want to be different. He says, strive to not be like the children of your parents. I was like, who is he talking to? But it speaks to the idea of no matter, because we're taught a lot of things and we keep a lot of things, and sometimes we don't know when to release things. We just hold and we keep going, and then we don't understand, why is my life not flourishing? Why am I not happy? Why am I not feeling the gratitude and the peace? Because I'm holding on to things that aren't mine. Now, tomorrow, some of you will travel, and some of you're gonna spend time with people you love, but you might not like a whole lot. Because some of you have been on journeys where you've changed from the ideas of what you were brought into, but you still got to go to those dinners and you got to make it through. And you want to be in a place where you're not sitting there strategically trying to figure out, how long do I have to sit here before I can leave and they don't talk about me for the rest of the year? You want to be in a place where you're even thankful for that. You can see the evolution perhaps, and not that they're in a lesser place, but the evolution of perhaps where you started from. So I'm going to give a quote because I'm real big on science and religion go together. They never should have parted, but they did. And so we're going to bring it back. But Einstein has a quote, and Einstein says that the theory of space and time is not absolute. So the way movement happens is not absolute. It's dependent on the speed and the position of the observer. There you go. I like you people. Who's the observer? We are. We're the observer. But we only, and Einstein goes on to talk about we live in the past, the present, and the future all at the same time. Now, how many of you have exclusively tried to live in the past? Yeah, it did not work. It was awful. You don't get anything done. And how many of you tried to live in the future? Yeah, I've done that too. Nobody knows what you're talking about either. Louise Hay reminded us that all our power is in the present moment. So we have to be here. So even though Einstein said, because we are, in the present moment, we can heal the past and we can create the future. So we're very powerful beings. But he goes on to say, and we're not going to be offended at this, he goes on to say, events that are still in the future of a slow-moving individual may have already occurred to a fast-moving one. Don't get your feelings hurt. Keep it together. He's not offending anyone, but we're all talking in mind. In mind. So to be thankful and to be grateful is to be able to stand in your present moment and have the courage to live through those convictions. I'm going to bring in a little Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes says, we need more backbone and less wishbone. Right. Because how many of us, we're about to go into the season of vision boards, and some of us are good at it. We can do the vision boards, and we got boards from 20 years ago, and sometimes we look at those boards and we go, well, I did get that dog I said I wanted, but there's just so many things you haven't created because you got to have a backbone. You got to be willing to stand and say, this is who I am. Regardless of what I thought before, regardless of what I did before, and regardless of what people, because people love to remind you of where you were. Remember when you couldn't do this and when you couldn't do that, and you get triggered and you want to jump in on them, and you do. You want to give them some words, but then let them be who they are. Like tomorrow, some of you are going to get triggered tomorrow at that Thanksgiving dinner. I promise you. I promise you, I'm not going to get triggered this year because I'm with friends. I'm not going home. So I just tease it. But you're going to get triggered, but then you have to remember your center. Remember, triggers just show your edges, your growing edges. And when someone can say something to you and you go, okay, I'll receive that. But that doesn't define who I am. That no longer represents who I am. And I can move through that energy. So we talked about Heraclitus talking about don't be like the children of your parents. Don't be so attached to all you've ever known that you're not willing to be open to something new. Ernest Holmes also says stay open at the top. Be willing to be open, to receive new things. And we're going to throw in a little Eric Butterworth. Eric Butterworth said the unforgivable sin is the closed mind. That's the only unforgivable sin because there's no way to repent. And we know in unity, when we say repent, we don't mean that, we mean turn around. Just turn that thought around. Make the shift in mind. And then you'll embody all the ideas because the thing I love about this teaching is every time when we work on ourselves, the whole world benefits. There's nothing selfish about this. When we work on ourselves, the whole world benefits. I was reading a book by Deepak Chopra, and he says, let's make a vow to stop doing what never worked. Because how many of us do that too? This is the way we've always done it. And what happens when you keep doing things that don't work? You get resentful. You become angry. You ever met someone? Somebody was saying, I don't have to meet them. It's me. You ever met someone and there's just this simmering anger. Everything is a dig or a target. They can't find it. It can be a beautiful sunshiny day. Isn't it a beautiful day? It'll rain tomorrow. Or they become a martyr. They've taken on way too much responsibilities. And when someone tries to help them, no, I'll do it myself. No one can help me but me. No one understands it but me. But that anger and that resentment is building, and we all know it soon manifests. Whatever starts in the mind manifests in the body eventually. We know that as well. So what we want to do is we want to focus on what makes us whole. There's a Matthew 5:48 talks about be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. But there was no translation for the word perfect, so perfect got in there. But in the original, I don't know if it's Aramaic or Greek, but in the original translation that they took it from, perfect really meant whole. Meaning I embrace my whole self, even what I perceive as my shadows, what I perceive as my light. That's what gives, and when you know who you are, when someone knows, because Paul talked a lot about the lower nature and the higher nature, but when you know who you are, there's nothing more powerful than that. Even what you perceive as people want to call your weaknesses, they're not even your weaknesses because they all support one another. But you got to be in a place of being thankful to be able to look at yourself and say, I'm thankful for knowing this about myself. Let's go back to Heraclitus for a minute. Heraclitus talked a lot about, he called it the conflict of opposites and how they supported one another, like the bow and the lair. And so he was saying they do not apprehend that even in their conflict, it brings them back to themselves. Like a rubber band is stretching and it comes back to itself. We spend so much time, especially in New Thought, we spend so much time. Some of us are trying so hard to be so happy that we won't even acknowledge when there's a pain, there's a hurt. Like, nope, I'm, and even in other religions, I know growing up Baptist, always, I'm highly favored, blessed and highly favored. I was so sick of that. They had it on voicemails and it was on everywhere you went. And so what is it what's wrong with being, we don't want to stay there, but as humans, even Jesus showed a full range of emotions, sadness, anger, depression, whatever. And so what made us think we were supposed to just always be walking around one way, sad or happy? We're to experience we are to experience a gamut of things like some of you are going to experience tomorrow at that Thanksgiving dinner. So you're going to experience tomorrow. So let's talk about wholeness and what wholeness means. So I read an essay about 2 years ago by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I love Emerson. I call him Waldo. He's my boyfriend. And so he wrote an essay back in 1841 called Circles. And he talked about how the first circle is the eye, and the second circle is whatever is in the horizon of the eye, and the third circle is whatever that horizon produces. Now, in Unity, we teach thoughts held in mind produce after their own kind. And so that's why it's so important what that originating thought is, and then do I need to change it? Because you tend to keep creating from that place. So I start thinking about, well, what does a circle mean? A circle represents infinity and continuity and wholeness. That's what we're talking about, wholeness. But then what's the difference between, because a circle can be deceiving, it looks whole, but what's the difference between undivided and wholeness? Undivided is an adjective. Wholeness is a state of being. It's a noun. So what happens is if we haven't done our work or we're not in that place of thankfulness where we can stand and choose to own who we are and what we're dealing with, what happens is we'll take our triggered issues with our abandonment issues and we'll stick them together and say, I'm whole, I'm a circle. And then we have to say, but you're bleeding all over us. Because you say that. But the beautiful thing about when you're whole and you can stand in your power, no matter what it presents itself as, the beautiful thing is no matter what happens, you don't stop being whole. Whether you get a divorce, a foreclosure, a court summons, whatever happens, you're still whole. You don't stop being less whole. Someone says after 30 years, I don't want to be married to you anymore. When you know who you are, and you're human, you're going to have an experience. But when you know who you are, that doesn't move you from the truth of who you are. You might step away and do a few things that you don't typically do, but you'll come back to center. And the reason why that's so important is not only for your own life, those of us who are choosing to be true students, people are looking at us. Some of your children are watching you. You won't know. You won't know, but they're watching how you handle the diagnosis you got, the foreclosure notice, whatever it is you got, they're watching you. When we were growing up, my dad used to tell the corniest jokes. They made no sense. And he would say, don't go to school telling those jokes. And we would say, no one's telling those jokes. Yes, we were. We were telling those jokes because he was modeling for us a way of living, going through life with levity and sharing with people. And so we've carried that forth too. So don't be so quick to, just because someone looks like they're not paying attention to you. I mean, look at all that Jesus created through his works. He kept those Pharisees going, didn't he? Yeah. And so you may not have, people may never say your name. They may never write an article about you, but you are influencing people through how you move through the world, in your wholeness, in your completeness. And that's not to say you have to always be that way, but what it is saying is that you're living your truth. And that's a very, very, very important thing. So now we're going to do a little, I usually do this. Some people like it and some people don't quite care for it. We're going to do a little math. Not enough to make that 8th grade twitch come back that you had when you did Algebra 1. But let's go back to what Emerson talked about, circles and the wholeness. So let's go to St. Augustine, the Bishop of Hippo. St. Augustine reminded us that God is the center of the circle with a circumference that is nowhere. God is the center of the circle with a circumference that is nowhere. All right, so that's a little algebra, little geometry. But I said, let's break it down a little bit more. God is also then the diameter and the radius, because they all start at the center and the circumference is nowhere. So let's go a little further. What's a tangent? A tangent is a line that touches 2 points on the circle and then it goes off on its own. So think about that when you hear someone, they're saying some principles and some ideas you can identify with. You said they touched on some things, but then they went off on a tangent. I don't know what else they were talking about. And then a chord is a line that comes into the circle, come into the idea of God, but it won't come into the center. And that's where a lot of us get stuck. We come in, we take a few classes, we read a few books, but we don't really embody the principles. And so what we'll say is, but I was there. I attended. You were there physically. But have you really embraced the idea of what it means to be a new being in Christ? You know, Deepak Chopra talks in his book about sometimes being opposites. Like Heraclitus talked about the conflict of opposites. And so Deepak talks about if you were typically a negative person, maybe switch it up. Like go around telling people, oh, you look lovely today. Or, you look like whatever it is, like you've lost weight. Now, what's going to happen is if they're used to you being negative, they're going to think something's wrong with you. They go like, are you sick? Did the doctor tell you something? And then once again, you have to stand in your truth, knowing that they're defining you by something you used to be. Stand in the truth of who this is who I will be today. Be thankful for the courage to say, this is who I will be today. And I will give everybody ample opportunity. I'm not going to bite their heads off. I'm going to give them ample opportunity to see me in my newness and in my beauty and in my glory, and they can embrace me and I'll embrace them. We are all giving each other sacred spaces to be anew. And that's what we have to remember with each other. I'm doing good, y'all. I got 2 more minutes. So what I'm going to close with, it was 2 things I'm going to close with. I have a friend that I used to be a part of an ACIM group with. And she's still my friend. She's a white woman, and she said she got into New Thought, and when she would go home to visit her people, she just got tired. She said, I got tired of the homophobic slurs, the racial slurs, the gender slurs. She said, I just couldn't take it. So one Thanksgiving, she said, stop it. You're better than that. And she said, everybody got quiet and their eyes got big and they just started looking at each other. And she said, but things did shift. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because somebody might need to say this tomorrow at the dinner table, depending on from whence you come. A lot of times when we call people out, we put them down. And you can't that's not the way you invite people into a circle, into a higher way. You're saying, I'm calling you out because I see you here. You're better than that. You're better than that. And it also works. I find myself saying that when I find myself moving into a lower vibration thought, I say, Sonja, you're better than that. So it's a nice reminder and a way to lift yourself up and lift everybody around you up as well. So, but what happens is when you decide to step into a newness, people don't like that. Because what happens is any change in the group, everybody's got to move. Everybody's got to shift a seat. And so that's not so much they're jealous. Some of them are jealous. But they know if you're that different, they have to be different too. So I'm going to end with a poem that I found by Gwendolyn Brooks. Kanye West actually made it famous. And I went and looked it up because it's a powerful thing. But Gwendolyn Brooks she says, say to them, the harmony hushers, the sun slappers. And I want you to think about what that means. Okay, I did mess up my Baptist ways, didn't I? I'm going to finish with this. The harmony hushers, the sun slappers. And this is the part Kanye West made famous. Even if you are not ready for day, it cannot always be night. And metaphysically, if you break that down with Charles Fillmore's teachings, day means understanding. So even if you're not ready for the understanding, night means ignorance. It can't always be, we can't always live in ignorance because there's a cycle. Like Heraclitus says, the only change is constant. So even though you might be able to reign supreme now with the idea of darkness, it's not always going to be that way. She goes on to say, you will be right, for that is the hard home run. Live not for battles won. Live not for the end of the song. Live in the along. Live in the along. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.